Now we're going to add some hip motion. So we'll bring back our control curves, and we're going to start with the rotate Y of the hips. Okay, so that's this back and forth motion here. So we're going to undo that move, and we'll go into our perspective and graph view, go to the rotate Y, hit F to frame the little key we have there, get a better view of our perspective, and begin. So the rotate Y is pretty much going to follow whatever foot's going forward, and we'll look at where the foot plants in the Y to see how far to bring it forward, or where to add our pose. So for example here on about frame 9, that's where the foot pretty much plants in the Y, so we could just go to the rotate Y and bring the hips a little bit more to that direction of the forward foot, and exaggerate in the pose again just a little bit, but not too much. We also want to keep in mind how big the footstep is, because a bigger footstep would have a bigger rotation and a smaller vice versa. Okay, so now that left foot comes up and it plants at about frame 16 in the Y. So now we could go ahead and just straighten up the hips here. Alright. So here's what we get. Great. And now the right foot's coming back, but we want to have a key here to lock this pose in the Y until it's time for the hips to rotate back. So the foot starts moving back after frame 25, so we'll key the rotate Y there, and then as the foot's going back and plants at about frame 31, so we'll go to 31 and just rotate the hips back some. Again, exaggerating the pose a little, but not over exaggerating it. So about right there, and then we can check out our keys that we're setting. Okay. And then the left foot comes back and plants at about 43. So here we could just straighten up the hips. Alright, great. So we'll go ahead and scrub through and check out what we have. Awesome. So let's even hide our curves and just do a playback to check out our rotate Y. Hit play. Awesome. Alright, so our rotate Y is looking good. And now we can go ahead and move on to our last hip movements, which is actually going to be the rotate Z. Okay, so we'll go into our perspective and graph view, and we're going to get a little bit more detailed with the hips here. What's going to happen is as the foot rises, whatever foot is risen, that's the direction that the hips are going to point in, to that direction. And then when the foot plants, we're actually going to get a little pop in the hips. Okay, and that'd be the correct motion of the hips, because what's going to happen is just prior to the foot being planted, the hips are still going to be rotated in that direction, and then once the foot plants, because of the weight that we're going to show, the hips are going to pop back to more of their neutral pose with a value of 0. So keeping that in mind, let's begin. So on our first step, on frame 5, as that foot's rising, the right foot, we'll go to our hips and we'll rotate them down some, and again exaggerating our pose to add more appeal in our motion. So maybe we could bring it down a little bit more. Alright. And then as that foot plants, on about frame 9, what we're actually going to do here is work on the pop. So what we'll do is on frame 9, okay, we'll actually have the hips up a little bit there, and we could even bring up this key a little bit more. Not too much where it's above the key on frame 5, but just so that when it comes time to have the hips settle, we get this nice looking pop. So here's our pop on frame 10. Let's actually take this and move it down just one frame so the pop won't be too abrupt. Great. And then we could even exaggerate this pose on frame 11 a little bit more by bringing the hips a little bit more to the opposite direction. So here's what we get. Great. So now we'll move on, and we have that left foot coming up now. So for that, let's go to frame 14, and we will bring down the hips here, exaggerating the pose a little, and even checking out our graph editor. Great. And then when that foot plants around about frame 18, what we'll do here is on frame 17. We'll rotate the hips up just slightly. And then on frame 19, we'll bring them up like that. And again, a little bit more to the right. Not totally straight, just to exaggerate that pose some. All right, great. Awesome. So now we're to the point where the character is pulling back, and his hips shouldn't be moving here until after frame 25. So we'll go there, frame 25, and just key the rotate Z there. And as that foot's coming back, we can go here to about frame 20, let's say 28. So that right foot's up at about its peak. We'll go there and rotate the hips a little bit more to that right direction. Okay, and okay, that's where the foot plants. So at about frame 33, we could bring them up slightly. And on 35, we'll have them settle. So we'll bring them a little bit straighter. Boom. Okay, so here's what we get. Excellent. And now we have the left foot coming up. So for that, what we'll do here is on about frame 40, we'll rotate the hips again to the direction of that lifted foot. Okay, exaggerating the pose a bit. And then the foot plants at around frame 45 or so. So what we'll do is on frame 44, we'll bring the hips up slightly. And then on 46, we'll straighten them out a bit. Excellent. And that last right foot step is pretty small, so we don't really have to worry about animating the hips there. What we can do though is, rather than having the hips end on more of a abrupt pose here, is add a little bit of follow through in the hips just to keep that organic type feel. So let's go to about frame 49, a few frames after, and just add a little follow through where the hips go slightly back to the opposite direction like that. Excellent. So with these things done, let's go ahead and render off a play blast, see if we like our motion that we're getting here out of the hips. So we could render one off from this back view here. Here it is. All right, great. So our back view looks good. Let's check out more of a side view. So again, we can go into a more of a 3/4 side view, something that will allow us to really see how our hips are looking. How about from this angle here? Here it is. All right, great. Well, that's the lesson, and we're just about wrapped up with our light pull. All we need to do now is just spend some time and see if we could adjust anything else before we can call it finished and move on to our next task, which is transforming it into a heavy pull. So in the next lesson, we're going to spend the time doing just that, our final adjustments to wrap up the light pull.